Hello, my dear friend. We are all born into two worlds. Into our family, the first of which is our little earth. Secondly, we are born into the big world, the universe. But at first we do not realize the big world, the universe. That small family we were born into is actually one of the main factors that affect what we will experience in the future. Now every mother, every father may not be very healthy. In other words, he can transfer the traumas he has experienced in his past to his children. Or they may have conflicts with their children with the methods of solving their own problems. And every child needs to be valued, to be accepted in some way, to be loved, respected, to be trusted in some way. But within that family, some of these needs can be met, some of them may not. And the kid has to survive somehow. He develops his own methods to see this value. And at that moment it is the parents or other caregivers who do not give him what he needs. Creates a relationship template with it. A little later, I will talk about these relationship templates and common relationship templates. Because there is such a situation that we do not leave the relationship template we established there only in childhood. We do not realize that we can fit the same pattern around us with the people we meet when we are adults. We use the same method to be able to contact in our relationships, and we say, why have I been going through the same things since my childhood? Why the same people always find me? This is probably because you are included in that template of the story. And playing the same theater over and over again and expecting different results. If you get involved in your own story and don't write your own, you will always have the same ending as in childhood. Today I'm going to tell you about 7 childhood templates. Probably one of them will be very welcoming to you. The most important method to get rid of these templates is to realize it, and finally, I will say a few suggestions to get rid of it. The template that I want to talk about at the beginning is the guard template, the people in the guard template. I mentioned in a video before, people who burn themselves to warm others. People in this watchdog template had to somehow meet the needs of the people that her parents grew up with in order to be valued. And then maybe that parent is no longer in your life. Maybe somehow he is no longer exposed to this attitude of theirs, or the parents have changed. But this person maintains that same watchdog pattern for the rest of his life. For example, he always tries to be the savior of other people or ignores his own needs. He always feels like he has to help other people. When he is going to do something on his own behalf, he thinks it is a prank. And what happens when that happens is how people in the watchdog template feel after a while. Feeling depressed. Feeling worthless. And when you're in the watchdog pattern, you're making the other side lazy. You prevent the other party from taking their own responsibilities, and then you say, why do the same people always find me? Because you are repeating that same story. One of these templates was the watchdog template. Another template we brought from the past is the template of being oversuccessful. Now maybe you can say, what's wrong with being overly successful? But if your being overly successful is not somehow creating an added value or something that makes you feel good in some way. If you feel like a horse that always has to run like that, if you feel like you're going to fall if you don't run, you're probably experiencing the oversuccess pattern. So how do these guys develop this thing? In the oversuccessful pattern, there are often parents who have a very high expectation of success. Some parents themselves are very successful, and they expect the same performance from their children. Some parents also want their children to achieve what they have failed to achieve, and their own disappointments. And they offer the kid a deal like this. They don't do it directly or verbally. You have to be very successful in order for me to love you, and as a result the kid feels it, somehow, because when she gets a good grade in her exam one day, she turns into a person who is overly critical at that moment, and doesn't show much affection. Her parents are incredibly loving, incredibly caring, and she realizes at that moment. So she says somehow I have to be extremely successful in order to be loved. This is so in childhood, and when he becomes an adult, the person does not breathe at all. He doesn't even enjoy it when he achieves something like he always has to run. He immediately wants to move on to the next one. He says I have to do that too. Because being successful here is a system he has set up to get the love of others. But because he did it a long time ago, because it has evolved, this template doesn't realize that this is my main reason. He just asks, I have so many successes. Why am I still not happy? There is a situation connected with this very point, but the beginning is the same, the result is different, and that is they fail. The unsuccessful pattern also emerges, for example, in a situation where parents are overly critical and have high expectations. In the first scenario, at the oversuccessful point, the child is able to meet the criteria for success to receive the parent's love. And it goes on like a running horse throughout life. But not every child can meet their parents' understanding of success. Because the parent has an expectation in mathematics, my child has a talent in another field, and when it does not match exactly, the parent starts to direct all his arrows, all his anger towards his child somehow. He pulls back with the child's method, trying to be invisible. He hides himself in environments where he will not force himself in any way in life. He accepts himself, and somehow that he himself has failed. Says I am a failure. There will be no way from me, just in case. And if only he'd left it in his childhood time. But being behind in every way throughout life, being invisible, is one of the most basic characteristics of people who experience the failure pattern. Another template is the Savior template. People in the Savior template have such a serious disappointment, has unmet needs in some way, or was exposed to severely traumatic things as a child. Many things could have happened, from sexual abuse to physical abuse. These people feel so helpless that, for example, they may adopt the role of savior in their later life. For example, when I look at it, those who do volunteer work try to benefit people at the point of helping such nations. Some people have such experiences in their past. I lived so other people should not live. By the way, if people at this point of savior help the society by feeding themselves, I think it's very valuable for society. For example, someone in the role of a savior finds an alcoholic, for example, he says, I will fix it from scratch, I will have it treated, I will do everything for him, that is, he discovers a responsible point and sacrifices himself for it. On the one hand, it also directs him while sacrificing, there is also a narcissistic side to it. Meanwhile, he tries to compensate for his inability to control his powerless helplessness by directing the lives of others from his childhood. This is the difference between self-sacrifice and self-sacrifice that I mentioned at the beginning. So there's a little bit of control effort here. To compensate other people for their lack of control. Another template is actually a person that many people may encounter in their life. Party man, he says. The name of this template is the party person, as if he is having fun all the time, as if he sees the best side of everything, as if he is always jolly playful and doesn't give a damn about anything. But even before I studied this psychology, in middle school, in high school, I always thought that people who don't seem to care about anything have a mask. In fact, there is a pain in the background. Somehow there are disappointments. He has unfulfilled love. But you know, we have nothing, no problem, we're great, we're perfect. It's a defense mechanism. If you, too, act like there are no problems in life, if you have such a cheerful disposition to everyone, if you have such a joking disposition, and you don't think about any of your problems, even when there's trouble, if you're so into the play, at this point, you can be a party person. This is also a defense mechanism. An interesting thing, for example, is that some of the people who have this problem may have an alcohol problem. They may have an eating disorder. Emotional eating behavior. The party person is also the human who always looks cheerful and sweeps his pains under the carpet in some way. Another template is the hero worshipper template. This is especially true for some children who grew up in homes with a narcissistic father and a narcissistic mother. For the child, after that father or mother figure, who does not see any flaws in that narcissistic point and who criticizes others a little like that, looks too perfect, he brings out the hero-worshipping human figure. These people are so adoring people at that narcissistic point, and then at the point of following him, he always needs such a person. And it enters the orbit of such a person. For example, there can be such a point in the past of people who are too attached to such a leader by ignoring him in communities, cults and political parties, and accept what he says without question. Sometimes I even come across such things. There are harsh therapists. If you're in such a hero-worshipping pattern, you can go to that therapist for years. Oh, even if the therapist is hurting you. Because it is tough and inaccessible, and there is a need for it, along with the way it constantly proves itself. You trust him, you feel more comfortable in the way he opened, you surrender yourself to authority, and these people can be disappointed at one point. And they can waste their terms. This sometimes happens in relationships too. For example, a person takes his partner to such a central point that he entrusts his mind and his mind to him through the path he has opened. This is one of the behaviors we encounter in the hero-worshipping template. So which template are you using? Among those I have counted, and if you are living this pattern, the origins of the pattern you live in are at the point of your childhood experiences. If you want, you can share your experiences with us in the comments section. Thank you for listening to me, beautiful person. Be very good to yourself.